Good morning, good evening, everyone. This is Luda Kopikina with GAI Insights. Welcome to Daily AI News Review, where we rate articles essential, important, and optional. You can find the articles at gaiinsights.com/articles. Today, I have our wonderful crew, Adam, Ankash, Tim, John, and Paul, and we're going to talk through 6 articles that range from use cases to announcements. Okay, let's start with the first article, please, Ankash.
Thanks, Luda. So the first one that we have for today comes from McKinsey, and it is titled "The Future of Aftermarket Pricing: Unlocking Value with AI."
Well, John, what did you think about this? Is it?
I was going to do that
in?
optional, and it's a nice analysis, and McKinsey's actually pretty good at pricing analysis. Has been my experience, and you have to remember the aftermarket in autos is a huge business, and it's where a lot of the profitability lies for many parts of the value chain, from the manufacturers through the distributors and the dealers. And so this is a super important topic, and AI and generative AI allow them to do all the things you would expect: better analysis, micro segmentation, easier finding of capabilities, and so forth. So I think it's very straightforward. It's kind of a yeoman's work kind of piece of IP in terms of an article, but not a lot of breakthroughs in terms of insights. Very targeted market. And certainly important to essential for folks in that market, but I didn't think had any particular insight that was generalizable, and pretty common sense set of issues.
Okay, so optional for John. What did you think about this, Tim?
Yeah, I agree. It's a well done piece of analysis, but pretty niche. If you're in this business, maybe important. It's always interesting when I see articles like this. I don't know your perspective, John, but I always feel like this is a race to the bottom. You know, the old joke about from Warren Buffett about what's the best way to make $1 million: start with $1 billion and buy an airline. And this isn't quite that bad at one level, but it's hard for me to believe that everybody won't figure this out pretty quickly. And so it becomes good for customers, but not necessarily good for those in the value chain. So you have to do it, because if you don't do it, you'll get out competed. But they talk about increased margins, not clear how long they'll last to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that my experience with these pricing efforts over the years is it's actually such a complex and dynamic market that even if you do very sub-segment and micro-segment pricing, it really doesn't spread. The search problem is still hard. So I really don't think it's a race to the bottom. And the inventory, this is such complex inventory, and it's got dimensions of availability and quality, and is it branded or not branded, and it's just
So you're right. This may retain a level of complexity that AI can't really tame that well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it is a case of disruption in this particular space, right? So they're reporting margin erosion among the post-market auto part manufacturers, and there's a lot of AI looking at this space, trying to upgrade it in a number of ways. So it's like a case of disruption evolution almost, that I think is interesting, but probably optional for our audience here. Adam, what did you think?
Agreed. I'll leave it there.
Paul? Optional. We're going optional on that. Okay. Ankash, you're okay with optional, right?
Yes, Luda.
Okay, great. Optional it is. Let's proceed to the next one.
Okay, the next one comes from HBR, and it is titled "The Case for Using Small Language Models."
Yeah, we have been, as we were reviewing various models as they come up, I think we've been talking about why small language models will become the future. And this article summarizes it and puts a case for how important they are. What did you think about this, Adam?
Yeah, if that future that will become them were a little closer, I'd probably consider this essential. Debatably essential because it's forward-looking enough. The AI leaders need to be thinking about this now and already understanding it. I would say at least important. So this is discussing small language models, and there's things like 5.3 from Microsoft. We've seen over even 6 months ago some tremendous results from very, very small, like 2 orders of magnitude smaller than the state-of-the-art model. So going from hundreds of billions of parameters to not tens, but billions of parameters, and they can run on the edge. And because they're fine-tuned and purpose-built, they can still have state-of-the-art performance at that size for a specific task. And as a result, the cost, the speed, and the security of having it at the edge is just unparalleled. So it's important, if our leaders are not across this already, that they absolutely take a look at this article.
But it's interesting, Adam, right? We've been talking about it, we believe it, but we haven't really seen much of it implemented out there.
What's fascinating, Paul, I hear Paul talking a lot, even in the last couple of weeks, about this explosion in the cost, right? And I think that's why this is so important right now, is they need to be driving their focus back to what are more efficient ways to operate these models, and small language models is a big part of that.
But should we then put it as essential? Tim, what did you think?
Well, I didn't like this article very much because I don't like it when business people don't understand the technology and get things wrong. So I think there are I sort of agree to a certain extent with a couple of Adam's points. I actually think the most important point, well, maybe it's debatable, is the data security, the fact that you can run things locally on a phone or on a device, and you don't have to worry about going back to the internet or anywhere else. So your data security is greatly enhanced by that. And running devices on edge is important. But the reality is that we don't know how this is going to work out. And in fact, the reality is if the math says they aren't as accurate, they absolutely aren't. I don't care how much you fine tune them. They have smaller number of parameters, they have bigger loss functions, they're going to hallucinate more, they just will. And that has been the experience when people have actually measured them in practice. And in fact, in several of the studies in health, the large language models have consistently done better than fine-tuned small language models. So there's just a lot that's not quite known. I do agree with the general premises. These are going to be important. Ability to run on edge is important. I just think there's some flaws in the literal understanding of how these models work in this article. So it's hard for me to recommend it. So I sort of said optional.
I see. So Vivek also agrees with you, Tim, that it is not trivial to implement them and other small language models. And it may be the why we haven't seen cases out there. Okay, so
just early too, very early days. So I don't think they're unimportant.
Yeah,
I think they are important.
Yes. So optional from Tim, important from Adam. John, what did you think? I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I was going to give it an important. I agree that this is, as my wife is wont to say, fluffy, not stuffy. There's not a lot of real deep understanding of model implementation here. We know Randy and Tom pretty well. They're very smart folks. I don't think they're implementing any of these. But this issue of small language models, for all the reasons they lay out, right? Control, economics, convenience, asynchronous, areas. So I was going to give it important, but I don't feel strongly about it either way. The topic's important. This is a okay article.
Okay, we're going important. Paul?
Agreed.
Pankaj?
Agreed, Luda.
Okay.
Yeah, and I like Randy and Tom, so I have a lot of respect for them. They're very smart people, and I can support important.
Okay, great. All right, important it is. Let's proceed.
Okay, the next one comes from AWS, and it is a case study about how Snoonu is using AI to drive personalized product discovery.
Yeah, this is, I think, a second, if not the third, article about a use case in adjusting catalogs to be super personalized in real time. What did you think about this, Tim?
Well, this is not a generative AI article. So it's an interesting AI article, but this is classic what we might even already call legacy machine learning models. So that's what they're using here. They're using personalized models, basically collaborative filtering and other things to get better at what they were doing by making more vertical markets out of what they currently have as pretty static horizontal markets. So it's an interesting article in that sense. It's an interesting architecture and the way they put it together. But the last paragraph is, and now we're looking forward to using generative AI. So I think this is optional for our audience.
That's a good catch. I didn't think about it this way, actually. You're right. What did you think about this, Adam?
Yeah, I thought it was important until Tim made that comment. Some of the it's a great use case, and the statistics, the results are absolutely mind blowing. Right. Let's see if I can scroll down to the bottom. Some of these numbers they talk about.
Yeah, so it's a good point about use the right tool. Generative AI doesn't need to be used for everything. They got you get fabulous results with better filtering.
1600% increase in add to cart events from cart recommendations. I mean, I don't know what they're basing that on. 47 times the total model investment. So they gross merchandise value is 47 times what they invested in building it. So, and maybe that's the reason to keep it important is that Gen AI is not always the answer to driving these incredible efficiencies with automation and with artificial intelligence.
Right, but Adam, also, right, they talk about model training and preparation of data as a first step, and they realized how important the data was. If they haven't gone through this exercise with these stunning results, there's no way they can get to Gen AI, right, Leah? So it's a very important case in that sense. What did you think about this, Ankaj? You're on mute.
Yeah. So yes, Luda. So I think this was basis what was being discussed in the case study and the quantitative impact that they have shown here. It was important for me, Luda.
Okay. So thinking important, John, you're on mute.
Important.
Okay.
Unprecedented. I just want to say I don't think we've ever had, like in the past, if it wasn't a Gen AI article, we would just exclude it. So but I see what you're saying, Luda. You make great points. I mean, I'm supporting important as well. This is just a first.
But Adam, to that point,
it's so foundational to Gen AI that it's absolutely worth highlighting.
But to that point, Adam, though, see if we get alignment on this. I mean, I think our core customer that we're looking at is the AI leader who's solving problems at the company. And increasingly, he or she is picking the right tool. And we've seen already with using a keyword and semantic search on target example yesterday, that was 2 different tools that was used. And I think this is a similar example as well.
Yeah, I think it's in, Paul, for the scope of our daily news, because this is like a prep. This is so foundational that, and with that even, you can do great improvements. So, okay, important it is. And we'll talk about in the daily newsletter that it's fundamental and pre-step to Gen AI. All right, let's proceed to the next one.
And Lou, before you go on, Kevin's got a good point here.
All right.
Yeah, I'll read it. He mentioned that it is a good reminder, as we were discussing, that traditional AI and ML often provides safer, more profitable results than Gen AI.
Well, sometimes, right, Kevin? We can argue about that. You could go both ways, but yeah. All right, that's probably true. All right, next one. Please, Ankaj.
Yes. So the next one comes from Alibaba, and they have introduced Qwen3 ASR, which is their speech to text model.
Yeah, and so Ankaj, I will ask you to review it, but I actually listened to some snippets, and a company I was working with is actually looking for noise cancellation models that you could actually pull out the speech when it's really, really noisy, and they show great progress in that. So Ankaj, could you please walk us through?
Sure, Luda. So basically, this Qwen3 ASR model, this is built on their Omni model and has been trained with multimodal and ASR data. It provides high accuracy across almost 11 languages. And the different thing is where other sort of ASR model, they struggle is it can recognize voice in songs as well. So in songs, in raps, and in noisy environments as well. And another interesting thing that I found was that it can do contextual biasing as well. So basically, let's say you have a healthcare specific or finance specific speech to text speech content that you need to transcribe. You can give this model a background text which is full of keywords related to that particular domain, and it can then bias its transcription in that context. So I think very good model compared to the ones that we already have from whether it's 11 Labs or OpenAI. So I think great performance on variety of parameters and some new innovations as well. So I was important on this one, Luda.
Okay, thank you, Ankash. What did you think about this, Adam?
I wasn't able to access this
Right,
article.
you
I
could
can
not
find out
access
why.
it.
Apologies.
Okay, Tim, have you been able to read it?
I have and listened to it, and it is remarkable, but I would probably put this in the camp of everyday miracles. It's a product announcement. It's important to people in this area, but there are already really good products out there. This is just another product announcement. A really interesting one, small model, all kinds of interesting stuff, but hard for me to give it more than an optional.
Well, yeah, no, but it is a product announcement. You're right. But the like, imagine the manufacturing plant where they currently can't use voice, right? They can only like press the button and talk to the intercom. So this enables quite a bit of applications, I think.
Yeah, but there's already lots of products out that can do approximately, certainly things in this general area. So it's not an undone
Incremental
area.
improvement.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going optional here. I think because it's product announcement, even everyday miracle, optional important. What did you think, John?
Yeah, I couldn't get access either. Given the conversation, I go optional.
Aha. Paul?
John goes automatically optional if he can't get access. So,
So you should go important, and then.
no, I'm definitely obvious. It's a product announcement.
Hey, I get new data from our friends here. Come on.
Okay.
I do think the Alibaba in general continues to have really good stuff. I think it's underrepresented in the mind share in the States, but this article is optional. It's definitely a product announcement.
Ankash, they're actually convincing me to go optional. Okay with that?
Sure, Luda.
Okay. Optional it is. Let's proceed.
Okay, the next one comes from VentureBeat, and it is titled How Clay and Octave Are Quietly Killing Off Traditional Sales Jobs.
Yeah, an interesting twist on how these two companies are doing this, and it seems like making quite a bit of traction and progress. Adam, what did you think? And please explain what they're doing.
Yeah, sure. So I was a bit put off at the beginning because it felt a little bit like just sort of product announcements for these two startups. But they're so I'm sorry, let me get back here. So yeah, I thought it was mostly a product announcement, but then as I started to read through it, there was this really interesting idea they're presenting about this go-to-market engineer and about this new role that's sort of a hybrid between someone who has that go-to-market expertise, but also understands engineering and automation skills. It sort of reminded me of that concept that John was alluding to earlier of like a bitsmith, someone who's really in the business, understands the business, has that expertise, but also can build and automate solutions. So I was debatably in the important camp for this one. I think it's a pretty interesting concept, and these are probably a couple companies on the leading edge of that.
Right. So instead of brute force looking for leads in a particular space, then finding their emails or whatever and approaching them to get that cycle shrunk, this is really looking for more marketing news in the particular industry, looking for unusual angles to present, and so capturing the potential customer with that new angle and approach that personalized to that particular industry. So and they seem like expanding through training those go-to-market experts that can then help companies do this. So interesting approach. What did you think about this, Adam? Oh, sorry, Tim.
Yeah, it is a product announcement, so but it is an important area, and I kind of agree. This actually makes the point that we've made many times in a couple of different ways, that it's the transformation that really counts. So and we've also talked about, well, where are all these jobs going if people say entry-level jobs are being taken out? Well, here's an example where not only are entry-level jobs being taken out, or let's say at least low requirements for skills jobs, being an early sales engineer kind of thing, but it's transferring the skill set from, I can make 100 cold calls in a day to I can figure out how to make an army of robots. And we've talked about having this army of robots be your superpower. So here's a first example. It's a little early, and there is a lot of talking their book here. So they have some interesting customers, but the question is, will this really transform into actually more sales? Because remember, sales leads are just process. Sales, Peter Drucker had a great old saying, the most famous management consulting of all time. He said, the only thing that really counts is a customer's check that doesn't bounce. And so at the end of the day, it's good. I was sort of on the border between optional and important because it is early days and this is a bit of a product announcement. But it's an important area and an interesting example of a transformation of a skill set towards more technology.
Yeah, but let's be clear what this is. I mean, this is an announcement of a $100 million funding round into Clay at a $3 billion. Clay is San Francisco. They've got their buddies over at this other company that got a $5 million seed round for doing something with GTM, and VentureBeat and Matt Madden, who runs that, who we got a lot of respect for, is right in the valley here. So they're promoting this, and it's
Yep.
No, true, but it is an interesting case of almost like upskilling the robots and changing how it will be done, or at least one idea. All right, so optional from Tim. John?
Yeah, I was on the fence between optional and important. I like the go-to-market engineering language, certainly a lot better than the language of bitsmiths. But I mean, this notion of, something engineer, customer service engineer, legal review engineer. I mean, for me, that brings in what we've been talking about, which is just, either an individual or small team that has an understanding of what the art of the capable is now, and understands enough about the process. I think that's an important idea, but I don't know. It's kind of clickbaity and stuff that I hated the title, but so I'm coming down on optional.
Mm-hmm. All right, Ankash, you have a final vote. What do you think?
Optional for me as well, Luda. I think Clay is doing a great job in terms of building this new capability. So they have been trying to educate the market in terms of what they have been doing. So I believe they still need to show more sort of success in proper outcomes, quantitative outcomes for clients. As Paul mentioned, this is more of a funding announcement, right? And a product announcement. So optional for me, but certainly a vendor to look out for going forward.
But Ankash, I think one of the things we're doing, we've seen the sweet spot kind of being code editing. And now we're starting to see the next set of departments over. And I think sales and marketing is a robust one where everyone's got it. Companies are willing to spend some money to experiment with this stuff here. And to their credit, they got out ahead of a lot of other ones here. And I think we're going to see a lot of experimentation. Yes. And oh, by the way, we're sitting in a context where, Salesforce, who owns the space, whose revenue market cap is down 25% this year, and just totally missing a big opportunity here, because this is tip of the spear for many companies here.
Yeah, and it's not just simple brute force. That's what I like about this article. But you're right, it's still early days. Okay, optional it is. Let's proceed to the next one, to the last one. Ankash, please.
Okay, the next one that we have comes from Nvidia, and it is titled Universal Deep Research, Bring Your Own Model and Strategy.
Yes. So we have talked about quite a bit about deep research, and but this article, Nvidia rather, argues that within the walls of the enterprise, you need more flexibility and more agility on the cost side and the like. And this is what Nvidia has done by creating the universal deep research wrapper, essentially. Tim, maybe you can tell us more about it and tell us what you think.
Yeah, I think it's semi-interesting. It's not great, and I would rate it optional. It sort of starts with a non-starter, if you will, because I read the technical report, and it requires the user to input the strategy in quite some level of detail. So effectively, you're writing the algorithm, and then it gives you a nice little wrapper mechanism so that you can input that algorithm and use whatever model you want to use. That's sort of their big plus. It does a couple of things. You can use any model, so you aren't stuck. Oh, once I decide I want to use deep research, I have to use Google, or I have to use OpenAI or Claude, and then I just have to let them run the show because it's the thing. So here I can limit the reasoning effort to whatever model I want, and it's just one step in the process. And what I'm really doing is creating an overall workflow, which is kind of okay, and limits the LLM usage, so it keeps the cost down. So there's some interesting points to it, but it's research, and I think there's a real gotcha there that most people are not going to be successful writing an algorithm like this. So they're going to end up probably defaulting to going to an LLM deep research tool anyway, unless they create a front end that can use some sort of LLM to say, okay, just let me type in what I want and give me the strategy recipe that I need to feed into this thing. But it's interesting, but it's researchy and optional in my mind.
Okay. Adam, what did you think?
Right there with them. That pretty much summarizes it. Interesting and definitely researchy. Way too far to that end of things really to be relevant for the leader at this point.
For the segments that actually depend on deep research, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I guess there are some fairly robust deep research tools sort of at the enterprise level already, and this feels just sort of more
additional
in development. It's not really something that's production ready.
Okay.
Great concept. I'd like to see it. In a product and market.
Okay. So going optional on John. What did you think? Big O. Paul, optional. Ankash, optional. Okay.
Definitely optional, but this has been a very calm news. I don't think we have a lot of disagreement today, Luda. I'm not sure we all have our games here.
Yeah, and we have Tim and John and
essential. It must be essential. It must be
there
essential.
There we go.
All right, optional it is. As Ankash prepares the scorecard, we have half a minute to talk about any news we have.
Yeah, John, you want to share the amazing Google conference we were at yesterday?
Yeah. So we're at an event being put together by Imagination in Action, our friend John Warner, who is a fellow out of MIT. And yesterday we had just an unbelievable set of speakers, and then also entrepreneurs who are doing everything from, we had a guy who's got a flying car that he's actually sold 3,500 of. There's a humanoid robot that, it's not, the humanoid robot wasn't the interesting part. It was the fact of having built basically a robot remote control layer for any robot, humanoid or otherwise, is the startup. There's a engineer who created. He's an oil systems data analyst, and he lost a child due to a miscarriage, and then created a generative AI and AI tool that allows you to take images from ultrasounds and to predict any future problems with a pregnancy and so forth with over 95% accuracy. Just amazing thing. So there's all that. In addition, there's a presentation by the guy who owns Google's Google's major infrastructure. He was one of the leaders that created some of the TPUs, the tensor processing units, and then the optical switches that they created here at Google. And it was just amazing. I mean, they're talking about getting into super intelligence in certain areas, with areas that have very robust definitions of what improvement is, and they're making unbelievable strides in that. I was just really impressed at how practical and how fast moving these different domains are, and that's just some of them. And so for people who aren't paying attention to this, this is a bifurcated market. This is people who understand this whole new learning curve and capability and speed and application with which knowledge and economic value are growing. And then there's the rest of the world. And if you're not plugged into it, you really don't understand what's coming.
Okay. Thank you, John, for this great summary. Today, we have two importance and the rest are optional.
Well, and one of the things that we had a really good learning lab yesterday with a company called Maybell, which talked about a different approach of thinking about structured and unstructured data here. That's now posted on our GAI Insights channel on YouTube, but a very thoughtful, thought-provoking presentation there.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Okay. Thank you, participants, Vivek, Kevin. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you all tomorrow.